Hey guys, I'm Mike and I make stuff. This week, I've got something really interesting. A bunch of things fell into my lap, and it was all things that I think play right into what I've been trying to talk to you guys about. Some discarded items that everybody said was trash and it needed to go, but at the end of the day, I'm not so sure. Listen, this title isn't clickbait. I know that everybody's interested in what's going on with American politics and the American economy right now. Is America's economic policy, is it going to make things harder on the American consumer? You can tell you the truth, I really think it might. I'm not an economist, but I am somebody that believes in better safe than sorry. So if there was ever a time to get into repairing, repurposing, maintenance, I think that time's creeping up on us pretty fast. I'm not going to sit around and pontificate about politics or any of that other nonsense. All of us have the news. All of us have YouTube. We know what's going on. Heck, we do our own grocery budgets and we know what's going on. Now, what I am going to do is focus on what I think is important that I can do something about, which is to get you guys a lot more comfortable with figuring out the things you can control, the things you can fix, and start focusing your efforts there. The first one being a little microwave that I got here, and then I got a couple of pieces of home furniture, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, first things first, I should say some things about this before we get started. Microwave ovens can be incredibly dangerous. Let me explain what I mean. Inside each of these devices, as you can understand, it takes a lot of electricity in order to heat up or cook food. So there's methods inside here, what's called electrical capacitance, which means if you imagine it like water flows through a pipe. Electricity flows through a wire in much the same way. And sometimes you need to store up that energy, or you need to store up that water, so that you've got it available for as little or as much as you need at a future date. Capacitance, think of that as a water well or a water tower, a place where you can store a lot of that and keep it in one spot so that you can use it in large quantities if necessary. I'm sure you can imagine, because a microwave uses a lot of power, there is a lot of electrical capacitance in these things. Even after you have unplugged it, okay? Just because you turn off the faucet that's going to the water tower doesn't mean you emptied the water tower. It's still full of water. By the same principle, the electrical capacitance is still inside this machine, even though I unplugged it and it's been unplugged for quite a while. So that's something to be careful with. If you don't feel comfortable with what I'm doing, don't do it. I cannot be more clear about that. Don't do this. If you don't feel comfortable with electricity, if you don't feel comfortable about what you're doing, by all means, do not do it. This microwave, I was asked to, quote, make it go away because it scared the crap out of the poor woman that had it. As she went to heat up her coffee, in her words, it started shooting lightning everywhere and looked like it was going to explode. That's quite spectacular, and I can only imagine what that's going to look like, but I'm not going to try to duplicate that right now. I'm going to go over something that I think is a handy tip for all of you guys that are going to get ready to start doing your own repairs. And that's that if this thing failed so spectacularly, I'm probably going to be able to quickly see a point that's evident that shows me what might have failed. So let's get in here, open this thing up. Again, being incredibly careful and respecting electrical capacitance. Well, I guess I could take the rotating dish out of it first, right? Let's do that. I'm a smart one. Let's see what we're working with here. For those of you interested, this is sold under the brand name Hamilton Beach. I bet you can take a good guess as to where she bought it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start removing fasteners from back here, which are odd fasteners I'm going to try to get you guys to focus on this. If you can see that, it looks almost like a little star. Now that type of screw is called a Torx, T-O-R-X. Obviously, your straight and your Phillips screwdrivers won't fit. But there are a myriad of screwdriver sets that will contain Torx screw heads. Here's one. This one happens to be a T20. I'll try to find some Amazon links if you guys are interested in picking some up for yourself. But that's another point of planned obsolescence or intentional obsolescence that I'd like to make, is that many companies, in an effort to prevent you from doing what I'm doing right now, granted, in good intentions, because they don't want you in here for mostly safety concerns. They don't want you ending up invariably getting hurt because you get in here because you don't know what you're doing. But sometimes, just sometimes, they do it with the sole intent of ensuring that you cannot go in here and repair it yourself. Even beyond the Torx star pattern that I talked about, they may use hexagonal, similar to what you see on this Allen wrench here, or a variety of other what they call security screw heads. Those are there with the intent of keeping the end user out. I am not telling you to void the warranty on your products. I am not telling you to ignore safety regulations. And I'm not telling you to do anything dangerous. What I'm intending to do is merely to educate. If you choose to do something with that information, understand that's entirely up to you. So as you can see, I've undone the screws here. Also a couple that were on the side, which is going to allow us to see inside our microwave here. There we go. Now, step one, when you're looking at an electrical appliance, any electrical appliance, any electrical appliance, I should say, is that if something is going on, the term we like to use is letting the smoke out of it. Electronics run on smoke. And of course, it's not going to run anymore because you let the smoke out of it. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look and see if we can't find any evidence that indicates where they might have let the smoke out of it. Let's get you in closer so you can see what's going on. Now, as you see here, clearly, danger, high voltage. I bring this up because there are quite a few people, unfortunately, that have been gravely injured and unfortunately sometimes deleted themselves playing around with these two items right here. This is that stored capacitance I was talking about. Try not to get close because I don't want to become the next one. And this being an electrical transformer. Both of these, in simplest terms, right now, we'll get into the specifics of it later if you guys want to understand more about electrical principles, or I can link you to some videos, whatever you want to do. Both of these give the ability of turning this little 110 volt input coming from your power outlet in the wall into a whole lot more power to use for cooking the food. Now, as I'm looking around, what I'm hoping to find is a place that shows evidence of smoke, of charring, of burnt wires, anything that would give us an indication that that was the component that failed and caused the dazzling light show that she was describing. However, I don't seem to see anything clearly. I don't see anything clearly that's indicating it was a point of significant failure. That's your water tower. As the power is coming in, it travels down your cord here, right here. This is the front controls where the number pad and all of that other, see, that's where the rest of that is. And this is the step-up transformer that converts it to all the extra power that it needs for the microwave to operate and do what it has to do by emulating microwave energy out of the magnetron. As I see no direct indication of failure, what I'm going to do next, I believe, is to go ahead and let's plug this guy in and see if we can't recreate what she described, because I don't believe, after looking at this, that it was nearly as spectacular as her words would indicate. I think it was pretty dramatic. I think it might have scared the bejesus out of her. But let's get this thing buttoned back up. We'll plug it back in and see what we're working with. Hold tight while I get this guy back together. And back to the reason why, if you missed it at the very beginning, why I named the video what I named it. I've tried to be a bit subtle about what I had to say. I don't want to sound like I'm gloom and doom, Chicken Little, the sky's falling. I don't want anybody to think that. I think that a prudent and intelligent person can deduce that we could potentially see simply throwing things away and replacing them as not being the most elegant solution to our problems really quick. I think we can all agree that we're all quite interested in finding ways to save money and to stop relying on an ambiguous someone else to do things for us. This microwave is probably the skeeviest of all the things that I'll be mentioning today. There'll be some other things that I think will be interesting in displaying just how prevalent the disposable culture has become, and how with a little change in paradigm, a little adjustment in our perspective, we can see that studious people with the right mindset could absolutely have a lot easier time in a potential future that may arise. Again, don't read this as something political. That's not what I'm saying. I don't even want to opine about politics. I don't care about it. If you guys want to argue about it in the comment section, that's entirely up to you. Just be respectful. Don't be asses to each other. It's all I'm asking. I don't care what side of the political fence you might be on. We can all agree that every one of us deserve at least to be respectful and to be respected by other people. My channel ain't gonna become one of them things, okay? Please don't. I don't see a single person that would consider maintaining and repairing your own items as something that isn't a wise decision. Okay. So we plugged it in. We got a little beep. No lightning show just yet. Nothing's exploded. That's good news. I've left the rotating carousel and the Lazy Susan out of it and on. Let's give it. Okay, it's operating. No lightning show just yet. I set it for 1 minute, so we'll let this thing run and see what happens. 1 minute has passed. Nothing went nuclear. Full disclosure, I did move around, jostling a couple of things inside just to check to see if there were loose connections or something was about to break free, or if something had evidence of short circuit, which I didn't find. But we could have potentially removed whatever the problem was, or again, whatever happened wasn't nearly as dramatic as she originally spoke of. Or it could have been something as simple as she left her spoon in her coffee. Nonetheless, let's give it one more test and see if we're good to go. Put the carousel back in. And I'm going to get a coffee cup with some water. We'll see if it still operates, because it could be that it's simply operating, but the magnetron isn't getting energized and it's not heating anything up. Maybe something shorted out inside. We'll find out in just a moment. Back to the dangers that I talked about. There are videos out there on YouTube that speak about converting these things, using that transformer, using that magnetron for high voltage, high current applications in other machines. I recall somebody using it for something called the Lichtenberg technique to put a lightning shaped burn into wood for cosmetic effect. All of those things are wonderful to do. But I also feel confident that probably the vast majority of the people that are watching my videos are not ready for that. And people have died doing so. All right. Carousel's in. Put a cup of water in there. Doesn't need to be a full cup. Hold on. Now, as this thing is running, there's a pretty good chance that this microwave is just fine. There could have been any myriad of things that happened that ended up causing what she saw. Do I blame her for wanting to get rid of the microwave and choosing another one? No. Better safe than sorry, as I said just a moment ago. If you don't feel comfortable with what it's doing, then by all means. But I believe that this is also a distinct opportunity to talk about how a little bit of inspection, a little bit of insight, a little bit of testing may be able to get you something of use. This cost me absolutely nothing. That sucker's hot. I don't know if you can see the steam coming off of that. I think this thing works just fine. So what we'll do, given that we don't have any direct evidence of how it was malfunctioning previously, let's put it through some duty cycles. By leaving it out here in the shop, we'll use it as a shop microwave, and we'll let it do what it does. Safe for re-implementation, reintegration back into a kitchen setting. Damn it, cup's hot. Item number 1, microwave, down and out of the way. As I get the other items up here prepared, let's talk about what I'll do should I decide that that microwave is in good shape, and what we'll do about it afterwards. If I intend to market that item to someone else, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to put it on Facebook Marketplace, or sell it online, or sell it to a friend of mine, whatever it may be, please be clear and disclose what you know about the object. In other words, if somebody wants to buy that microwave, I'm going to tell them somebody else experienced an issue with it, but I took it apart, I looked at it, I didn't find anything that was a catastrophic failure, I operated it again and it seems to work fine. I don't want anybody to end up in a position where they are deceived. I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to pull a fast one on them, nor do I want to pull a fast one on them. So if you're going to do this kind of thing, and you're going to end up doing what a lot of people may consider, which is to sell that thing off and get a little profit. I mean, heaven forbid you got $10, $15 worth of fold money you can put away. Just be good to the person you're selling it to. Don't withhold all of that just because you think they won't buy it. I think a lot of people would much rather you be honest. Moving on, Well, when I was a kid, we used to call them TV dinner trays. And it was disposed because we had a point of failure right here. If you can see that. Looks like the wood broke. Let go of this fastener, which now prevents it from doing what it's supposed to do, which is to be in this orientation just like so. Now, if you're mechanically inclined like myself, I bet you can see that it's a real easy segue to figure out exactly what we got to do to get this rectified, and I think we can do that. I don't even think we'll need anything fancier than maybe a piece of pallet wood or something. Let's talk about how I'm going to do that. I know that this is my point that failed. I know that there's another point right over here. It's just fine. So what I intend to do is break these guys apart. See the hurdle that they may have had when considering how to fix this thing. What we have here is that each of these aren't screws, but they're riveted together so that it can't be undone and replaced with something as simple as a screw. All we need here is a couple washers, a nut and a bolt. But before we do that, we got to get this thing loose. Give me just a minute and we'll get after it. The humble angle grinder. This particular angle grinder is a brand name called Bauer. Comes from our friends down at the Harbor Freight. A lot of you are budget savvy and potentially you'll save a ton of money going to the Harbor Freight. Pick up discount tools, parts, other similar items. I hate to tell you, the current economic climate says that Harbor Freight, in my humble opinion, will be one of the first places impacted in a measurable way, as the vast majority of what they import, well, we know where it comes from. These guys are quick to cause significant injury for those not accustomed to operating them. Namesake, and I'm going to cut off these rivets and get rid. These devices are loud, they are dangerous, they throw sparks, they are a fire hazard. Please refer to the manufacturer manual, safety regulations, everything you possibly can find on how to operate one of these if you're not familiar with them. I am quite familiar with them. I've been using them for years. So I'm going to go ahead and dive on. They are loud, so I'm protecting my ears. Give me just a minute. As you can see, that didn't take long at all to go right through that. So imagine how quick it'll go right through your finger if it went through steel that fast. I'm grasping these with a pair of pliers because, unlike a saw blade, which does so by scraping out material using its teeth, this is purely working off of friction. So all of this is getting heated up by the friction of cutting through it. Now, the more I think about this, the more I think we can just leave this guy alone, because we can make a template out of the one that we still have. As you can see on this side, it's undamaged, and I've preserved the original shape. I know the width, the height, I know the thickness, I know the length, I know the profile, I know the position of the holes. I can learn all of that off of this. So let me show you how I do that. I have this old board here that came from a table that I once worked on. And look at that, it's exactly the right thickness. So all we have to do is work on the profile and the height and the hole position. We'll be ready to put this guy back together and put it to use. Now, there's a lot of people who are hesitant about doing any of these things. Give me just a moment. I'm going to line this up. If you'll see what I do here, I'm going to trace around that with my pencil. Now I'm missing this piece, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert it. Line that back up on the corner. And complete it. So this is going to be my new piece. Why did I take it out of the center? Because I've got holes in certain places. And that one saves me some trouble of lining it right back up. See what I did there? My line extends right here. So what I've done is I've saved myself having to drill a hole because I've already got one there. So I'm going to cut this guy out over at my bandsaw. The next thing we need to do is make a decision as to whether or not we want to transfer this curved profile to this piece or just run with it like it is. And I think I'm going to go with the latter. So, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer using this original broken piece as a template. For it during the cut. Now we have our 3-hole pattern. Now this bit's called a countersink bit, if you can see that. It has a regular drill bit at the tip, but it also has this cutter which will create what's called a countersink, which allows the head of the screw that you're going to drive into that hole to go down beneath the surface. I'll show you what I mean here in just a moment. These things are super handy. They create a hole very similar to what we originally had. And when we return our screws, they will now fully disappear beneath the surface of the wood because they are countersunk into the wood. Now the last thing that we need to do is to translate this hole. Now this will take a tiny bit of finesse, but I think I can get an accurate approximation of where that hole was simply by tracing what was left. Was 1/4 inch. So we're going to go find a 1/4 inch drill bit. No, I didn't sort them. Let's chuck up this 1/4 inch. Get this thing put together. Because then okay. We've gone clean through. Now that that's all said and done, I'm going to go through and raid my old bits, or my old bolts rather, and nuts. Now I found a nut and a bolt, a couple of washers that would be suitable. However, seems my nut and bolt are a bit too large for my 1/4 inch original hole. We're going to make that hole just a little bit bigger than the outside of the teeth of the threads. It's a beautiful day today. The kids are having a great time. The neighbor kids, anyway. Looks like we're good to go. It just as easy. Perfect. I bet you can see an issue here. It's quite a bit longer. But I am going to use the angle grinder that we talked about earlier. And I'm just going to shorten this bolt up so it's about the same size as what we need. About that long. There is not a single thing you'll be working on out in the shop that's worth your fingers or your health or your limbs or your life. There's just not. They sell a veritable cornucopia of various countersinks. There's a variety of them on Amazon. Again, I'm not anyone that promotes or talks down about any particular brand. Just understand that if it's less expensive, it may not have been of optimal professional quality. Okay, so that's on the outside. So we want to do the same. We'll put a washer in between so that they can rotate freely without damaging each other. Tighten down the nut. There's the fix we did on the little TV stand table. Next we had a couple little chairs held together with those same Allen screws, hex screws like we talked about before. Thrown away because they were rickety and unstable. A few turns of the wrench, we were good as new. Alright guys, so literally today we had a pair of chairs, a small, I keep calling it TV dinner stand tray, but a small portable table and a microwave oven that all came into our possession for nothing more than somebody thought they weren't saving. And we committed all together less than a half hour's worth of effort into them. And I know the idea of the economy is terrifying for some. But a couple of people have reached out to me and told me that it was really good that I decided to start doing this channel right about now, because I think the things that I've been passionate about while I went through my regular 9-to-5, while I did my normal job, took care of my family, it became more and more important to me that I knew I had to do something. I needed to do what I can to get what I knew out into the world. And now, strangely enough, it looks like it's going to be more important than ever. Something else I wanted to mention about that table and those chairs and stuff. When you look at and inspect those items to see if they're capable of being repaired, if you determine that it's just beyond your scope or that you just can't do it, they're too damaged, they're too far gone, even though that piece is completely destroyed, it still has value. This broken piece that I replaced on that little table, even though it's broken, let's say the rest of the table was destroyed, I now have a living blueprint of how I can make that table again if I want to. So if something is broken, then consider, was it a style or a design that you liked or that you feel comfortable being able to remake? You can use the parts of that old thing to make your own thing. I know the economy scares the hell out of everybody. I know that I personally feel there's probably tough times ahead. But we can make it. The more we do this, the easier all of it will be. The more you practice these disciplines, the more you try to figure out what the problem with something is. Every time you do that, you educate yourself. whether it's a big lesson or the smallest lessons. It's all there for you and it's ready. And I think that the more we embrace that, I think the more that we grasp on wholeheartedly to that frame of mind, the easier the future's going to be. If you got the right mindset, trash to treasure, right? There's no limit to how many things you can learn, how many things you can make, and how much easier you can make your future be. Listen, for those of you who have been tuning in for the previous weeks, I really appreciate it. I do. I hope that what I'm doing is doing something good for you. And if it is, I hope you'll give me the feedback and let me know. Tune in next week. We'll keep on keeping on. I'll give you another update, see if that microwave ends up working or if it ends up blowing up in my face. If I don't make a video next week, then I guess I'm dead. But I also want to try to take those wooden items that we made, and maybe we'll talk about sanding and refinishing and see if we can't make something look a little bit nicer. Again, thanks for sticking around. See you next week, guys.